You're listening to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast with Randy Rubenstein, episode 51.
Hey, podcast listeners. If you happen to have a strong-willed kid who is kind of pushing every one of your buttons lately, I have a resource for you. I made you guys a free guide where you're going to get some tools and tips and strategies to quickly get on the road to creating a happier household. I know you're pulling your hair out. I wanted to make you something so you could start getting some quick wins and building some momentum. So if you want to grab your copy, just go to mastermindparenting.com/free guide. And I hope you enjoy it.
My name is Randy Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast, where we believe when your thoughts grow, the conversations in your home flow. So today on the podcast, I want to talk about a post that I saw recently in a mom's group on Facebook, a group that has about 6,000 members where people typically tag me here and there to weigh in on things. And when I go through and I've been tagged on something, or if I read a post that in some way concerns me, I quite often find myself getting a little depressed, and it just seems so doom and gloom so much of the time. And what I find is like this, so this mom in this post, she was talking about her son who was 2, and she says, "Please tell me it gets better. He's defiant, he won't listen, he's crazy active, I turn my back, he's on the table, he's on the chairs, he's on the counters. Nothing I tell him works. Nothing is working. Nothing. It's like nothing is working. Like, what all has she tried? Please tell me, does it get better?" And so she really was looking for like mom community, which I get that. Like motherhood, especially, I think is something that we don't talk about. Is I think it can be really lonely and really isolating, and I think there's so much mom shame out there, and there's so much judgment, and everyone finds themselves in judgment. And recently I've been studying over the last, year or so, a lot about judgment. And typically we judge other people and we're all guilty of it. Me definitely included. This has just been an area that I've been working on, is we typically judge other people who are like a step or two behind us as a way to make ourselves feel better. Like, oh, at least I'm not as bad as that person. I remember there used to be a couple that I knew that would like high five each other. This is so gross. When they found out that people were getting divorced. And so obviously they had some issues and insecurities in their own marriage. And so it was like, oh, these people are worse off than us. But I recently have read that we judge people that we know, we're like, oh, there's some evidence that they're doing even worse than I am, so I can maybe feel better about myself. It's like a superficial way to feel better. And so I think that's so often the case in parenting, is deep down, like we all, like the big worry is, please just tell me I'm not screwing this up. Please just tell me I'm not going to screw up my kids. Or even the joke of, well, my kids already have a therapy fund. It's like, we're all going to screw this up, but it's deep down our biggest worry, and we really want to get it right because like we're raising humans. We're raising people. Like this is pretty important. And so we all know that. And at the end of the day, we all know we're going to do it imperfectly. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to bring pieces of the programming from when we grew up, and even especially the things we didn't like, we're going to bring those patterns and those pieces to the table until we learn how to do it differently. And then we practice and practice and practice and practice how to do it differently. And there's lots of things from most of our programming in our childhood and our upbringing. There's lots of things that we want to repeat, that we want to do well. We want to do the way our parents did. I think so often, though, with the things we remember or the things we just really want not to repeat are all the things that we're more focused on that didn't go so well. And I don't think a lot of this stuff is even in our conscious brain. I think a lot of it's in our subconscious brain. And so we're not even always aware of that. So I see a lot of that in these moms groups. I see where people are searching for community, and there's a lot of nuanced competition. There's a little bit of a condescending attitude at times. There's a little bit of that, oh, yeah, let's commiserate. I got you, girl. Oh, I've been there too, which looks like empathy, but I actually think it's destructive, because what we got to remember is you become like the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. So choose carefully, that famous saying, I think by Jim Rohn, is when we commiserate on how terrible kids are, and then we have other people showing up being like, oh yeah, same for me, same for me, same for me. Well, what we focus on grows, and then that starts to normalize that reality is everyone's reality, and we just can't even expect any better. And I think that's super destructive. So I saw some people chiming in and being like, when she's like, does it get better with her active 2-year-old? She's like, I saw somebody, no girl, it gets worse. And then a bunch of people started chiming in, oh, wait till 3 and wait till 4. And this particular mom, she's like, spanking's the only thing that seems to work. We've tried reward charts, we've tried, sticker, bribes, threats, and all those things work for a minute and then they wear off. And that's exactly what I teach, that all those things are just band-aids, but they're not long-term solutions. And I think that, it's interesting because that whole what you focus on grows. So 2-year-olds that you believe and you identify and classify and categorize as terrible, well, they grow up to be teens. Do you think they grow up, those 2-year-old, those terrible 2-year-olds, and I'm putting that in air quotes because obviously I don't think any 2-year-old is terrible. Do you think they grow up to be fantastic teens, or do you think they grow up to be terrible teens too? Right? That's just going to grow. So keep focusing on that, and you're sure to have a hell of a ride when those 2-year-olds become teenagers. And when you look at 2 and 3-year-old defiant behavior as terrible, right? Yes, they're going to be terrible at 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and it's just going to become this out of control train. And I want you to know, one of the mastermind parenting pillars that I teach, all behavior is communication. Okay, so there's no terrible behavior. All behavior is communication when we have the courage to get curious and to look at, what is our kid trying to tell me? They don't know how to verbalize it. They don't know how to tell me. They don't have a fully developed brain. They don't have those communication skills yet. So they show me and tell me how they're feeling on the inside with their behavior on the outside. So the way we would look at a busy 2-year-old that is climbing all over everything and seeming kind of hyper and real argumentative and defiant is a busy 2-year-old is like, we got to start with basic needs. Like, let's look at sleep, food, activity. We got to investigate and assess all behaviors, communication. And then based on that, we have to learn a better way to support them. If it's a sleep thing, I mean, even an hour of sleep deprivation for a 2-year-old. A lot of 2 and 3-year-olds act like they're ready to give up their naps. And let me just tell you, an hour and a half less of sleep a day for a 2 or a 3-year-old is the difference between a crazy hyper kid that is not able to listen and, a cooperative kid that seems joyful and easygoing. So that's the thing with sleep deprived kids. Their symptoms look very similar to ADHD. Whenever I hear somebody say, for sure my 2 or 3-year-old is going to be diagnosed with ADHD, I'm like, how much sleep are they getting? And what are they eating? Because at 2, they also start to lose their appetite, because, when you're growing into toddlerhood, you're kind of meant developmentally to lose some of that that baby chub. So it becomes really important for us to make sure that they're getting the right nutrients, that they're getting, that they're not just eating goldfish and pretzels and sugar all day, that they're also getting some, a decent amount of protein and minerals and nutrients from some fruits and vegetables. So we've got to get curious, investigate, assess. What does the sleep look like? What does the food look like? What does the activity look like? A lot of kids at 2 and at 3, and especially boys, they're real into developing their gross motor skills. So how much of an outlet are they having? A lot of screen time? Is there a lot of opportunity for running and playing and really getting to, I'll say, like, run them like a puppy? Like we've got to make sure they're getting enough activity. And remember, kids learn by what we model. Spanking is hitting. So when you're spanking, to shut it down, because just know, just like those reward charts and sticker charts and the 1, 2, 3 and the counting and all that kind of stuff, it's going to work temporarily, right? It's something that your kids, especially if you haven't done it before, it's something they're unfamiliar with, so it's going to be a surprise. And as soon as they familiarize themselves with it, and it's just something that becomes part of the deal, they're onto it, and that's when the sticker charts and all those things stop working. They're just a band-aid. It's the same thing, like spanking. It's a band-aid. It instills fear, and it's going to shut it down in the moment, and then it helps your child to associate pain with a certain activity. So it may shut that activity down or that behavior down temporarily, but they don't associate all behaviors that you consider off limits to be associated with that same pain. So then they start doing, and they start playing around with other behaviors that are usually bigger. And this is the other thing. A lot of the moms in this thread were calling their kids a naughty behavior. So just to use that terminology, they're going to start experimenting with a lot of naughtier behavior. And so anytime we're identifying our kids as terrible or naughty, what we focus on grows. We're going to get terrible and naughty behavior. We're not going to get more cooperative behavior. And when we use things like spanking and fear, do you think that fosters connection? Or does it foster a team mentality? Does it when somebody you're afraid of that you think is going to put their hands on you and hurt you, are you more inclined to feel connected to them and to trust them and for them to be your soft place to land when you need help figuring something out? Is that somebody who you consider to be on your team, or does that contribute to a whole weird power hierarchy that there's all kinds of deep-seated stuff that comes from that? We all know that. We know those fear tactics. They may shut down a certain behavior in the moment. Chances are you're going to get a lot worse behaviors down the road, because nobody likes being controlled. Nobody likes being fearful. And you certainly get to an age, it's usually called adolescence, where you're going to rebel against anyone that was instilling fear in you, and you're going to show them that it's revenge time. And that's the whole reason for teenage rebellion. So are you okay? Kids learn by what we model. Spanking is hitting. Are you okay with your kids hitting their siblings or other kids at school? Because when you spank them and hit them, just know that's what you're modeling. If I want to shut down the behavior, if I want to control someone else, and I can't think of, or I don't know the communication tools to be able to do so, I'm just going to hit them, especially if that person is smaller than me. So are you okay with your kids going out into the world and hitting other people to get their needs met or get their point across or to make sure that they have control of a situation? So when you spank your kids, just remember that's what you're teaching them to do. And it would be pretty hypocritical if you're spanking them and then you're not okay with them going and hitting other people to get their way. So changing the conversation in your home, it happens when our kids are 2, when they're 8, when they're 12, when they're 16, when they're 22. The way it begins begins by us getting curious and realizing all behavior is communication. If I got a busy, defiant 2-year-old, what are they trying to tell me? What's going on? Let's investigate. It's like going to the doctor. If you go to the doctor and say, my elbow hurts, the doctor's going to ask questions before they diagnose and then offer some form of a remedy or solution. We got to do the same with our kids. We got to look at their behavior, and we've got to investigate and ask questions and figure it out and assess basic needs. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, we're all human 4-leaf clovers. We're not robots, and it takes a minute for us to figure this out, learn these new communication tools, and also realize, like, our kids are growing and changing and developing, and parenting doesn't come with a manual, right? And our kids don't come with a manual. Everybody is a unique individual. And when we start to have these productive conversations in our home by being curious and figuring things out, and not overpowering through control and measures that don't feel good for anyone, well, when we start to learn how to have this productive conversation and learn these tools, our kids learn from a very young age that we're a team. Like, this family is a team, and it sends them the message that we're willing to understand them. We're willing to get curious and learn new supportive tools to help them be their best selves. We're not going to spank and stifle their spirit. We're going to work together. We're going to be their soft place to land. We're going to connect before we correct. We're going to build trust. So I urge you guys to learn new tools to master your mind, and I'm so grateful that you're listening to this podcast. And I hope, I've heard from so many of you. I know so many of you have sent me the sweetest messages and thanking me for this podcast. And so I really hope that you're taking this to heart and you're trying some of these strategies out in your home. And if you feel called to take this further, you'd like some more hand holding and accountability, please reach out to me. I have a really special mom community, and even after, it's so fun to hear from people, like, 2 years after they've worked with me. I got a message from a mom who I don't think she's worked with me in maybe 2 years or so, a year and a half to 2 years, and she sends me a message this morning, and she said, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. I hope everyone's good, and I wanted to thank you for the most valuable gift you gave me, the ability to see my son for who he is and embrace him. It really has come full circle, and questions have been answered, and I owe it to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You have changed my life and my relationship with my children, and I value that more than anything in the world. I hope you continue to reap your rewards while changing lives. Thank you for leading me to the priceless gift of engagement with my babes. Love you." So, and I said to her, this is it. This is why I do what I do. And it's not because of me. Like I tell everyone, I don't live in your house. All I'm doing is I'm a vehicle sharing some information and a recipe that's worked for me and many other parents. But it's up to you to take action. It's up to you to be willing to have the curiosity and the courage to take action, imperfect action, because none of this comes naturally. Most of us weren't raised with these programs. It takes time and practice to learn this new style of communication. And you have to be willing, like I tell my kids all the time, whenever you're a beginner at something, nobody starts off as an expert. Like, it's vulnerable. You got to be willing to suck. So you're going to start, and it's going to be fumbly, and you're going to keep getting back on that horse and back on that horse and back on that horse, because imperfect action, every time you get it back on that horse, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Like perfect inaction. So imperfect action, being willing to try, being willing to sound awkward, being willing to be fumbly, it's all part of the deal, you guys. And I encourage you to get on that horse and Start being willing to suck. Okay, guys, hope you have a great week. Bye for now. Hey, podcast listeners, if you're ready to take this learning to the next level and get some accountability and some hand-holding, I encourage you to schedule a call with me and hop on my calendar. And to do that, all you need to do is go to randyrubenstein.com/discovery. That's randyrubenstein.com/discovery. Can't wait to connect with you.